So I have kind of a technical writing question around working with clients' stories and confidentiality. And I know in the beginning of the book, you talked about creating kind of a mashup of people's stories, but I wondered in terms of, do you ask clients straight out for permission and let them know that they may recognize aspects of themselves? Could you just speak to sort of the nuts and bolts of how
Yeah.
that works?
Yeah, that's a great question. So it's not a mashup. These are not composites. I had to write that at the beginning because there's one scene in the Charlotte story that is borrowed from an anecdote from another client who was very similar to her, and it fits so well into her story and the point I was trying to get across to people that I put it in her story. So there's like a paragraph. But other than that, these are real people, real stories. Everything is disguised. So in terms of permissions, because I was a writer before I was a therapist, and I was always writing about everything I was doing, I have in my informed consent, and from day one, I had this, that I am also a writer and that I might write about anything that comes up so long as I protect their privacy. And so they know that going in, and most people had seen things that I had written because they were, New York Times and things like that. So they had read me before, and they knew that I handled things in a very respectful way and protected confidentiality. That I wasn't writing like lurid accounts of the therapy room. And this book was different because it was very detailed and it was very much following the treatment. It wasn't like a quote here or an anecdote here. It was really their stories. And so, first of all, I had to think about who I would ask and why, because there were some stories that I thought would be really great for the book that I didn't even ask. For example, there was a woman who always wanted to be like the favorite therapy client. And even though I feel like we had worked through that, by the way, I didn't write about anyone I was currently seeing on a weekly basis. So I felt like that would just blur things way too much, even if I was writing about things that happened 5 years earlier. So this woman was no longer in therapy, but um, I felt like she would say yes just because she would think, oh, I really was the favorite patient. And I didn't want that dynamic to be happening. I could see that kind of reemerging if I were to ask her. So I didn't include her in the book. There was another one who she always wanted to, she had trouble saying no. And I think she had, very much worked through that. But I thought that would be a very awkward position for her to be in if I asked her this and she didn't really want to be in the book, that she might say yes, even if she didn't really want to be. So I didn't include her either. So the people that I asked, I really thought long and hard about, first of all, who should I ask? And then what these conversations would be like. And I wanted them to know, all of the parameters, which is that I was going to change details as I pleased. I was going to protect them. That they would have to trust me, that I was going to protect them in this way. They were not going to read it before it came out. And, and were they up for that? In Julie's case, it was her husband, and who I had only met in the context of being at the house when she was dying. And then again at the funeral. So that was those conversations that I had with him were incredible. And thinking about Julie and what she would want. And when I was seeing Julie, she had always said, you should write a book one day. Like she would always say that. And so I felt like I kind of had her permission in that way. And so I changed any detail because with Google, you can find basically anything on anyone by typing in like a word or two. So I had to make sure that anything that was very specific, the name of that had to be changed, right? But other than that, they didn't read it until afterward. And a lot of people thought they were in it, which was interesting, who were not. So they'd be like, was that based on me? No, it wasn't.